Hey kids, thanks for joining me again in the garage. We're going to be doing a front lower control arm bushing removal. Replacement is pretty easy, especially if you use aftermarket ones. You don't have to press them in or anything. So like, subscribe, comment down below, hit that bell for notifications. See you in just a minute. Alright, so the way these come out, you'll need basically a socket, because how the bushings get in there is they're squeezed in at the factory from the outside, and they've got this little rim here. See if you can see that. You can see the little rim that's part of the sleeve that fits inside of the lower control arm. And so there's a couple different ways I've seen to do this. You can take a bottle jack, stick it in between here, and kind of push it out. That's one way. You risk kind of spreading these arms out though, and so that's a problem. But then you can also put a socket in here. If you pound this, what I do is I hit this sucker with a chisel, and then that gets this lip where you can either maybe hit it with a Sawzall. I've done that, or you can get it out a little bit so you can get a socket under here that then slides into this. So this here is a 36 millimeter socket, and that should fit right in there. So if we look at this, it's kind of hard to get your calipers in here. I don't know if you can see that, but that socket just fits right in there. So that should do the trick. So I guess what we'll do here is we will take a look at this. We'll set this up at the press. Well, actually, first I'll go down and we'll pound these out with a chisel. And then we can set it up in the press. That way you can get a bearing sleeve over the top of it, or even a regular sleeve over the top of it, to press it up into that sleeve around this edge here. So we're gonna go down to the ground here, and we're gonna hit this sucker. Actually, we'll go over to the bench vise and we'll hit it there. So see you in just a second. All right, so previously I've used a couple different types of chisels on this. You're just gonna pound this rim around. So we're gonna bend it back. That way you can kind of get in on this bushing. There's a couple different ways I'll show you. I'll do one where we hack off with a hacksaw or a reciprocating saw, and then the other one will do with a bearing sleeve that just kind of fits over it. So we'll see how those work. So let's get this pounded down. As you can see, I've got it in the vise here, got a little grip on there so that it doesn't really mar up the control arm. Maybe touching a little bit. Actually, let me adjust this because I don't like how that sits. You just got to be careful. You don't want to crush that. So I think what we'll start out with is, I think I used this one before. As you can see, the tip on that is pretty marred up. So we'll just start out with this one, see where we get here. Hopefully this is in there tight enough. So oops. Well, let's try this one now. So when you're doing this for doing the bearing splitter, you got to get some separation, because the bearing splitter is going to fit in here and press down on this sleeve. So let's keep going here. So now I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to try to do the other side, which is much harder to get to because of how the control arm sits here. So you can kind of see how that's Kind of getting some separation in there. So now I'm using this pointed one. I don't know if you can see that. So I don't know if you can see that, but that should be enough. So let's see if I can't. No, it's not quite going to get you zoomed into where I want you. But as you can see there, I've got a nice lip. Here, let me pull it off. And so, as you can see there, I got a nice lip. This side here is not separated, but when you put that bearing splitter in there, you can set it on this little pad here. So we're going to take this over the press and we're going to give it a go from there. Okay, so here we are at the press, and you can see here, got the way this bearing splitter sits on there. It's on the outer diameter of this little piece here, and so yeah, so the way it's set up is I've got a bearing sleeve, and this here is a 82 outer diameter, 82 millimeter outer diameter press sleeve that'll just sit on the top there, and then press it down through with this. This is a 36 millimeter socket. I think we talked about that over back at the bench. So let's get this all set up in the press here, and then we'll do some pressing. And just so you know, the bearing sleeve kit here is just the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh bearing separator and puller set. Item 62593. I'll put that down in the description as well, so you have that. So should fit on here. There we go. So as you can see there, it'll kind of squish this a little bit. So let's, I'm just going to go ahead here, do some cranking on it. Got to make sure, because that socket is a pretty tight fit, so we'll need to watch here and make sure it's going in the tube there. Yeah, just like that. Pa-chang. So, well, I got a little bit more to do on it. Let's see here. So with this out of there, you can kind of see a little better here. Let me get this into a position here. And this is why you pound that rim up, because basically when you get this bearing separator on there, you're trying to get that right on the outer edge of that external tube there that the this metal sleeve fits into. Oh look, that's just gonna, I think I can probably just pull this out of there. Let me remove this bearing separator real quick. It looks like I can just get this out by hand now. There. So you know, it's a little crusty, but overall, not too bad. You know, what we're going to do on this other side, you know, let's try the same thing, but without pounding this out. I've seen some other people who kind of put that on there tight so it grips rather than sits on that lip. So let's try that now. You want this thing on there pretty snug, but not overly snug. You don't really want to. It's going to leave somewhat of a mark on the lower control arm, but you want to kind of minimize that. So and that's as far in as I can fit this, since there, you know, down, you can't see it, it's off camera maybe a little bit, but it's hitting down here. So that's the other thing you'll have to contend with. Let's see how this lines up here. Okay. It looks as though it is going to press it in. We'll see here. Yeah, you can see it's kind of going in at an angle here. I don't know if this way is going to work or not. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. See, that's, I've seen a couple people do it that way, but this other side, you know, because this arm is just at a different angle, you know, there's not as much room on there, you know, because this front pivot point is closer. And so what you have to do is get this lower. Let me try. I've got a 1/2-inch plate. This might give us the clearance rather than those 1-inch plates. Still might give us a problem though, so let's try this though. I don't know if that helped or hindered. Looks like it might be in there a little bit straighter, so. See what happens here. Looks like it got it. All right. The other set of control arms I did this on, man, they were rusty as whatnot, and so this one, it was definitely not as easy as these. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull those out by hand now. Might need to do a little more pressing on these. I'm going to get a different size socket here. Hang on. So this is a 30mm. It's a little taller, which could definitely be an issue, but it goes in that inner diameter much easier. So we're going to see here. I don't know if this is going to cause an issue or not. So this is mostly all the way out anyway. So it's mostly just light pressing at this point. Yeah, that's out of there, so. There you go. And let me take this off and I'm going to show you kind of what ends up happening on these. So you can see here on this one that, you know, I just gripped this outer diameter with the bearing splitter. It leaves a little bit of mark on there. You can file these down. I'm gonna get these all sandblasted and painted and everything, make them all nice. But you know, it leaves that mark there, whereas on the side where you pounded it, since it's setting on this, the bearing splitter is setting on this lip, you can see there's really no marks at all. And so that's kind of the difference. I don't know which way, you know, these marks here, when you just have it sitting on the outside diameter, aren't significant. But you know, it's something to consider when you're doing this. But that's how you press these out of there. So like I mentioned at the beginning, doing the aftermarket ones is not a big issue. I use I think it's Strong Flex. I'll put the ones that I use down below, and those you can just push them in by hand. You put a little grease on them, push it in by hand. Then there's a sleeve that goes in the middle, and so there's not all this press work that you got to do with it. So there you have it. If you like what you saw, hit that thumbs up. If you're watching for the first time, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and keep on wrenching.